Alrighty, so here's an attempt at video number 2 here. And what I'm going to be tying is a buzzer pattern or a chronomid, and I'm going to start this off on a 1760 curved hook in a size 16 made by Daiichi. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to put a little bit of thread base down. I'm going to leave myself about an eyelet's distance there at the tip, mainly because I'm going to be tying in some materials there later, and I want myself to have plenty of room because that's where the majority of this fly gets its bulk, is right there at the top. So like most flies, they're a little bit bulkier at the head and then they taper off towards the back. So I put a nice base down here, and then I come in with some wire. The wire I'm using is a hot orange in size small, some UTC. And then all I do is just tie this in on the side. I like to tie it in on the side because I'm going to do some, if I can get it on the side for you. I'm trying to learn how to tie them on your side so you can see here, so bear with me. But I tie that in on the side, give myself a nice flat surface to tie in some tinsel later. Also, doesn't compromise the profile of the fly at all if you just tie it down the side. So do that, and I'm going to take it just beyond the bend of the hook here. One more. We'll cinch that down, and I'm going to come back up. Next step's going to be tying in some tinsel. This is a black holographic tinsel. This is made by Vivis, and it's in a size large. And then I'll tie that in on top. Not the end of the world because I am going to be palmering this, but it's like it's a little easier to make that bend in the hook when it's tied in on the top here. And then I will do the same thing, tie that into where I tied in that wire. Quick little test here, lift it up, do one more. Couple securing wraps there, bring it back forward. And then I'm going to stop about where I started my thread originally, right about there. I'm going to throw it in. Oop. Bring it back again. And I'm going to throw it on my bobbin cradle. And then what I'll do is I'll wrap this tinsel the same direction as my thread, and that way it'll pull it onto the hook as I tie it off. The wire is a little easier when you're counter wrapping this to be on the opposite end. And I'll take it right to about where I started that thread. Like I said, I'm going to be tying some stuff at the tip of this, so it's not the end of the world to have it going all the way. So get my hand out of your way here. So now I'll come in and I will tie in this tinsel, do a couple turns, tighten it up a little bit, couple of turns, then I fold it back on itself, do a couple more wraps on there. That way when I snip it off, it lays flat down on itself, you don't have to worry about it. And now I'm going to come in, take this thread just a little bit forward. Now I'm going to come in with this this wire. I always call this wire thread, and I don't know why. I've made a handful of these videos in an attempt to make it as smooth as possible, but I keep saying the same dumb stuff, so there you go. But anyway, now I'm going to counter wrap this wire back up the tinsel. This will be a nice secure fly, plenty of strength. I'm also going to be adding some resin, so it's going to be super secure. Then I will end that where I basically end everything else here. And then I'll tie that off, put one wrap down, and then I actually will pull this wire and I'll cinch it up a little bit more because I am going the opposite direction. Put a couple in front, a couple more on top there, and then I will helicopter that off there. Okay, tie it down. Now I'm going to come in with some pearl tinsel. This is also Vivis in a large, that's medium, but this is a large size that I'm using here. And then I'm going to wrap it in on the top, and I want this to be as centered as possible because I'm going to be folding this back over for a little flashback. So get it nice and centered there on the top, and then I will tie it back to where I again just stopped everything else. It's okay to build plenty of bulk right here. It actually is what I try to do on this fly, build myself lots of bulk. Do one more right there, and then I'm going to come forward, kind of build this taper towards the eyelet just a little bit more, still leave myself plenty of room there. Now I'm going to come in with some Spanflex. This is made by Wapsi, and this is definitely the hardest part of the fly because it's a stretchy, rubbery material, and it kind of fights you a little bit, so you'll see that here shortly, because I'm sure I'll mess it up, but it's alright, we can get a little froggy. And then I'm going to twist this back a little bit. So I've wrapped it around about the halfway point of my thread. I keep the tension on my thread, that way I can slide this up to the underside. Once I slide it up to the underside, I go ahead and bring that wrap around, keep that tension. And then I'm going to kind of split these, go around, and I'll turn this so you can see. So now that those are on the underside, I'll go ahead and wrap those also back to where I stopped everything else, and now I can cover them up. Because this is a rubbery material, it's really easy to kind of flatten it out with some wraps, and if you don't, it's super easy to come in with a black Sharpie and just color up any of the Spanflex that you miss. So then I'll take this Spanflex, throw that in my material clip. Now I'll grab my pearl tinsel, and I'm going to fold it back over the top here. I do kind of a loose-ish wrap to get it started. That way I can kind of center this pearl tinsel here on the fly. Do 2 wraps, 2 tight secure wraps, that's on there. Kind of mold it a little bit. Then I'll fold it back on itself just like I did that black tinsel. And I'll do a couple of wraps, and I'll come in and snip it off. And again, same thing, it'll lay down on itself when any tag ends or anything like that. Now I'm going to come in with this Spanflex. I don't pull too tight on this. If you pull too tight, it takes away all the nice, I don't know, like you call this a gills or rib or whatever you want, but I leave it pretty loose. And I come in, and I'll turn this, so I come in and I wrap it around like this. And the reason I do that is because that way when I snip it off, it's not compromising the eyelet at all. It's kind of off to the side. So once I get one wrap on there, I'll turn this back so you can see. Then I'll get another one here and make sure I didn't fold that down too far, which I did. So I'll just back it off a hair, pull it over the top a little bit, and then I'll do that again. So that'll work just fine. Doesn't have to be perfect. Now I'm going to come in, put one in front of that, then I'm going to bring this other one, same thing, over the top, kind of cinch it down there, and then I will go ahead and tie these both in together, and I'm going to start tying it back. Do quite a few wraps there, get it going. So once I do that, I kind of tighten it down a little bit, do another wrap, tighten it down a little bit, and then because this stuff is stretchy, you can pull it and snip. Be careful you don't pull too tight though, or else it'll slip back through that thread. And then you'll do that right, like just like that, and then you're going to come in with your whip finishing tool, go ahead, tie that off, and then I'm going to do my best here. Maybe spin my thread a little bit, kind of flatten it out. I'm going to do my best here at angling this back to grab as much of that as I can and flatten it out. So good enough for who it's for. And then you're basically done now. Now all you're going to do is come in with some resin. I'm just using some Loon Flow, and this first pass I'm just getting the resin on there and getting it into between the Spanflex and that pearl tinsel. I'll take some back onto the body here. I don't want to compromise the ribbing of this wire, so then I'll kind of bring this up like the side of this little nozzle here. Bring it up, let me put a little bit on the back. And I'll bring it up, and I even take my fingers sometimes and just kind of touch it. And then I'll put a little bit more right there, pop that bubble, and we'll throw the flashlight on there, cure that first pass. And then I bring in just a little bit more, and I bring it in just on top. All it does is add some magnifying effects to the fly. So I add it just to the pearl. That's the only part I really care to kind of bring out the pop in that pearl tinsel by magnifying a little bit with a little bit more. And I might even add just a hair more. Make sure I get my thread wraps there. Pop that bubble. Boom. Cure it up, and then I'll turn it over, make sure any that rolled underneath gets nice and cured. So this is a super secure fly, counter wrapping wire, also throwing on some resin. This is a killer pattern for the still water. It actually works on the river too. I threw it on more as a joke the other day, and it actually worked pretty good. So tie some up and get out and fish. Thanks for watching.